Live, you gotta watch your language.
Okay.
We're live, okay. Well, hi, Phil Nelson.
Hi, Phil.
I'm so pleased you came today.
Thank you, Don Mazziotti. Well, thanks for the invite.
Yeah, I used to be on your art committee.
Oh, great.
It's great that you came.
Yeah, well, of course. Glad to do it.
It's doing a wonderful job.
Yeah, I hope so.
I'm John Tyner, president of the forum.
Yeah.
And the forum meets on Mondays from September to early June, and we bring issues of public substance to the body. And the body's composed of volunteers who consider their mission to try to bring public issues to the public at large, hence our television. And we are televised on TVCC and it's replayed. And I think we run a little chaser at the bottom that tells you exactly when. Today, I'd like to thank a few folks. Gary Olson is here, but I don't think people are aware of what Gary Olson does by being the forum webmaster. And it's great stuff that he does. And we have a program committee folks, Kathy Stanton, Wayne Potter, Ann Matt, and John Hutzler. And John's also on the bylaw committee too, so John's putting a lot of good work, and I'd like to thank Kathy for her work. But in any event, the topic today is the City of Beaverton's Economic Development Program and Sustainability. We have Speaker Don Mazziotti, who's Director of Community and Economic Development for the city. So I'm going to let him speak about his background, and again, we're going to have about 30 minutes of remarks, and we're good 5 minutes plus or minus on that, and then we'll open for questions. So let's have a warm record. Welcome for Mr. Mazziotti, and again, when the questions come around, what's the important thing, guys? And what's the rule on follow-up questions, Chris? Very good. One question, forum members only, succinct, short, and we want to limit the personal insults to the president after the meeting. I'm used to it. I can take it. Don, want to take it away?
Sure. Thanks a lot. Thanks very much. Good afternoon. Thank you very much for the invitation, the opportunity to speak to the forum, which of course is a highly respected venue all over Beaverton and for that matter beyond. I'll give a self-introduction you want. Well, let's see, born and raised in Iowa, so I'm an Iowa kid. Went to Drake University in economics, and then University of Iowa. I have a law degree and a master's degree in planning. Came to, after teaching law school for a couple of years, came to Oregon to work for Tom McCall, who was then governor. So I wrote legislation for the governor. Shortly thereafter became chief planner for the city of Portland, and I developed the Portland Comprehensive Plan back in the 70s, the actual comprehensive plan that people now refer to as a historic document, and I guess it is. But I'm very pleased to be here. I've been in Beaverton for 3.5 years working with Mayor Doyle and the council. My job title is Director of Community and Economic Development. That's part of the department structure of the city. The Department of Community and Economic Development has 4 divisions. The first is planning, responsible for current and long-range planning for the community, land use and zoning. Second, the building department or division. The building division inspects homes and buildings to assure safety and health in the community. Inspectors who are out every day. And then we have a structural engineer who is on duty all the time checking for larger scale projects where there are structural issues that need to be analyzed. and then a host of other plan review and plan check type people who are looking at plans as they are submitted to us by the development community, the architectural community, contractors, and others, of whom we work with many, if not most, in the community. Our division is about 60 people strong. We have a sustainability division, which is responsible for green building, promoting green architecture, trying to develop sustainable practices in the community to save energy, and for that matter, to manage resources effectively and efficiently. And finally, an economic development division, which I'll talk a bit about a bit later. They are responsible for business recruitment, retention, and expansion, as well as reaching into the existing business base and helping firms secure financing, develop business plans, and hook them up with their appropriate trade association or appropriate organization that can be of assistance to them. A lot is happening in Beaverton, as certainly Councilor Stanton knows. She was part of a good deal of it, and we're grateful for her service, and I miss her being there, but I'm sure she's carrying on doing all sorts of other good stuff. But let me talk a little bit about what's happened in Beaverton since I got there, because that's my basic base of knowledge. I arrived when the 10,012 census or 10,010 census was being reported in 10,012. And I learned that Beaverton's population from 2000 to 2010 increased by 18%. About 1/2 of that increase in population consisted of non-native nationals and non-nationals who are moving into Beaverton, largely attracted by design work and advanced electronics work from Intel, Nike, Columbia Sportswear, and one of the 219 software companies that Beaverton has within its borders, if you can imagine that. Now, these aren't big companies. There are a few that are big, but most are, of course, 4- and 5-person operations. But it's one of our major economic bases for the future. So 23% of Beaverton's population is foreign-born, and there are 90 foreign languages spoken in the Beaverton schools today, which is quite remarkable from, say, 50 years ago, when I would guess that that percentage might be 1 or 2. We have a series of key projects that are underway since the last time I met with this group a couple of years ago. First, the city has acquired 3 key pieces of property in the Central District, both in Old Town and near the Round. They have acquired 2 square blocks of property south of Farmington Road and in what is considered Old Town between Lombard and, let's say, Angel. We have requests for proposals out on one of the properties, requesting a developer come forward, and this is at First and Angel, and develop a multi-story mixed-use project, primarily residential, but also supporting retail. And then a project at First and Lombard, which actually is under contract currently to Roy Kim and to CIFA, which is the Community Affordable Housing Community Development Corporation. And they are going to jointly develop 88 housing units at First and Lombard, and those plans are well underway. The other acquisition, which I think everybody's probably read about, is the acquisition of the South Office Building, or what was called Beach Metro. It's been called a lot of different things, but South Office Building was the original name of that project. And it will become, I believe, pending council action, the location of City Hall general government purposes, meaning the courts and the police will not be in the building, or emergency services, but rather they will stay in their existing facility and hope to develop a new facility at some point that is modernized. Meanwhile, general government services will move into the South Office Building. That's a 5-story building, 2 stories of which are leased out to private tenants, that creates a stream of cash that the city can use to retire debt on the building. And we will own it outright in 7 years, assuming that we're at 90% occupancy. And the rest of the building will be devoted to government purposes, and we have room for expansion on those 2 other floors should that be necessary. The government, in terms of employment numbers, is not growing, however. It's holding steady after a decline about 10 years ago or so, when we began to go into this long recession, which I hope we recover from soon. Our key projects include not just these building projects, but the promotion of the Central District in a number of other ways. Everyone knows that we have 3 creeks that connect to each other that create flooding problems for property owners all up and down the creeks. And so we, with the Environmental Protection Agency, are in the process of developing a 3-creek plan to improve all of the creeks in such a way that they drain more effectively, that the floodplains are diminished so that people who own property adjacent to them can actually develop the property with some high degree of certainty. We're going to do that by replacing non-native vegetation, which largely these creeks have, with native vegetation, widening in some places, and at the round, at the pond, if you will, on the north side of the round and down the hill, we're going to create an urban amenity park. We'll double the size of that pond, and we'll landscape all around it, and it will have easy public access, and it will help draw people to that part of the downtown, which arguably has deteriorated over the years and needs improvement. We'll also remove and relocate non-native species of animals from that area so that they can live, instead of living in tires and old box springs, they can live in a more welcoming environment. We have just completed the designation of an enterprise zone established in the city, which is a zone that allows businesses that make improvements of $1 million or more and hire 10 or more employees for at least 5 years are eligible for as much as a 10-year partial tax abatement on that improvement. There are a number of other things they must do to satisfy their requirements, but the idea is to try to attract businesses back into what is the enterprise zone or central district of the city. Since 2005, the property value of that area of Beaverton has declined by 27%. When you experience that kind of decline in property values, you know what happens to tax revenue. It declines along with those values. In order to bring back the tax revenue that we had been collecting, and also to stabilize any need for any sort of tax increase, the better way to do it, the more efficient way to do it, is to stimulate redevelopment and reinvestment by the private sector. And that's what the Enterprise Zone project is all about. We have here a contractor, I'm not going to mention him by name, but we have a contractor who's working on the first applicant for the Enterprise Zone, which is Veneer Software. And they will be adding a substantial amount of building and employees. And it was stimulated by the fact that they could qualify for this enterprise zone. We have 2 more applicants now pending. That's more development activity in the Central District than we've seen for the last decade or so. So we believe it holds great promise. We also have a master planning effort going on at the central, what we call Creekside District that I described to you, the urban amenity, the round and the like. But something really terrific happened at the round when the city acquired that building. The city acquired the building for $8.6 million. The building is valued at $17.5 million. And the city had a lease obligation outstanding on the building that was worth $13 million. We extinguished the lease obligation, and we made a partnership with a company called SKB, headquartered in Portland, who bought all of the other buildings and all of the other lots at the round. And they paid the city the equivalent of $1 million, which was owed by former developers. They made the city whole on those obligations. And now they're going forward, leasing the buildings, and very soon you will see all those unimproved lots that are largely made of ground-up cinders and the like will be landscaped and paved over and become attractive parking lots rather than, park as catch can, and hopefully will improve the entire area. Once the market returns strongly, they'll build buildings on those parcels, which of course is what we want them to do. A third initiative that may be of interest to you is in the area of community health. About 10 years ago, the Department of Health and Human Services declared apart 2 census tracts in the Central District of Beaverton as medically underserved. That doesn't mean that these are people without insurance. It includes those without medical insurance, but includes many other folks who have incomplete health coverage or health services available to them, and it's a sizable number. It's 20,000 or more that fall in that category. So we called together all 15 or so of the medical providers in the community, from Virginia Garcia Clinic to Providence Hospital to Kaiser to Pacific University to the usual suspects, but also Community Action, as well as Public Health, as well as Life Works, which gives attention to mental issues, and formed a consortium of that group. And now they, working together, want to try to integrate what they're doing into a single facility and a single practice, so that by integrating they can save money and deliver services more effectively and efficiently to their clients. This project is so significant that the governor named it one of his Oregon Solutions projects, and because it's so innovative, we received $1.6 million from the Centers for Disease Prevention and Control in recognition of the work that we're doing and to help us carry out that work and bring it to fruition. Now, Beaverton isn't all 1,000 flowers in bloom. We do have some challenges. We only have 90 developable industrial parcels, for example, and they average less than 5 acres in size. We have very few sites that are large enough to accommodate a large development or a large company. That's a challenge for the future because we want to keep a steady supply of jobs flowing. We have brownfields throughout the city. More than 20 parcels are now listed as brownfields on the DEQ listing, and so they stay out of service or they don't change hands because the owners are afraid that if they change hands that they'll be liable for cleanup, and the cleanup costs are very expensive. We're partnering now with the Environmental Protection Agency, and we had the Deputy Administrator of the EPA here just 2 weeks ago. And in several more weeks, we'll have a team from EPA come and begin to help us identify the sites and what can be done with them and how they can be done in a way that doesn't harm the economic interests of the owners, but gives them incentives to either turn the property over, meaning sell it, or redevelop the property themselves through programs that are available. A final thing that I'll mention is we completed a couple of years ago something called the Civic Plan. And the Civic Plan is not the comprehensive plan, but a more focused plan that looks at key issues. And the key issue that the Civic Plan addressed was Canyon Road. We've been working now for about 2.5 years with ODOT and with the Federal Highway Administration toward the objective of improving crossings, making it a more friendly environment for pedestrian and bike facilities, and to eliminate the many safety hazards that currently plague that area. We have redesigned it to the point of 20% of preliminary engineering is done. We're working steadfastly with ODOT to accomplish that. And we feel that, if you look at Lake Oswego's downtown and how they've managed to calm traffic on 43 and open up side streets, which is what we need to relieve traffic off of Canyon, that's the kind of concept that we're working on. We're doing a lot of other things. Our sustainability division has won 7 national awards for work that we're doing. We're just about to launch a project that will look at our internal operations and how we can continue to improve those to save money. By putting solar panels on the library, for example, we're saving $1,200 a month in electrical costs. Sorry, Mark, about that, but we're not. Okay, I know you are. PGE has been a fantastic partner and given us great guidance in all of this work. We've replaced 700 streetlights with LED lights, which are 10 times more efficient and provide greater luminescence and therefore greater safety. We're about to go out to the community to begin to ask the community, as a community, what should we do to make this a greener place, to lessen our carbon footprint and improve living conditions throughout the area. And we're pretty excited about that opportunity. We didn't know, but we discovered that every school in Beaverton has something called a green team. And the green team are parents and students interested in sustainability, usually 12, 15, 20, as many as 30 kids and parents who have organized themselves within the school to make these kinds of improvements. We're going to use those green teams in a collaborative manner and make a much larger team to do this community-wide effort, and we look forward to doing that. As I think most of you may know, my background is in urban redevelopment, and that's where I focus a good deal of my time and energy. We have brought on or developed very substantial financial expertise and are prepared to work with private developers, speak their language, understand their financing issues, as well as individual businesses. We're looking to a bright future for Beaverton. We think it's bright because we've got good leadership, we've got an honest government, and we've got hardworking people who are interested in taking our community forward. We're in the process of developing our comprehensive plan, updating that plan for the first time since Consular, I think, 1998. Once completed, that will mark the tasks that our community needs to do in a whole variety of areas. And we're also making out a plan for Area 6B. Now, those of you who know where 6B is, you go down Shoals Ferry, you head across Teal, and all of that area west, way out to Tile Flat Road, is what's called 6B. And that's about 600 acres of land which has been brought within the urban growth boundary. It's largely farmland at this point in time, and we're now making a plan for how can this become part of Beaverton's community. There will be a school, new high school located in that area as according to the facilities plan of the school district. And we're now laying out street routes and all of the things, all the infrastructure plans that are necessary to settle new ground. All 91 property owners voluntarily annexed to the area and now want us to develop it as quickly as we can. We think it'll accommodate about 3,500 additional people. That's kind of what's going on in Beaverton. I could spend all day talking to you. I would love to do it. But you gave me a 20-minute time limit, and I'm going to cut it at this point. Thank you very much. Questions?
My name's Bill Kroger.
Hi,
Thanks,
Bill.
Dan, for coming today. I appreciate it.
Absolutely.
I'm a resident of Beaverton, and I'm a forum member. I'm going to break the rule for just a second, and I saw a news release this morning that the city of Beaverton, by a publication that looks at crime around the country, ranked Beaverton #1 in Oregon for safest city, #2 in the Northwest, and 55th nationally of 70,000 or more population. So kudos to Beaverton, the mayor, the council, and the police department.
Well, on behalf of all those folks, I certainly accept that. Beaverton's safe because we have a great police department and we have great support for the police department, and I think they do a wonderful job. They could use a new facility someday, but you know, that's something for them to talk about because I don't know their work, but they're doing a wonderful job.
Well, now my question. I was kind of curious what was happening with along Broadway in that area. Maybe it's part of the Canyon Road thing you were talking about, but you know, the vision that I had when they talked about it and changed the tax plans and stuff was outdoor, you know, cafes and sidewalk and, you know, place for people to, you know, go and relax and have a good time.
Right.
Like you were talking, maybe like part of downtown Lake Oswego or something. Could you talk
Right.
a little bit about that?
Everybody hear the question about Broadway and what's going on there? Yeah, like I said, I could talk all day about a whole variety of topics. Broadway actually is the focus of the work of two different organizations, one called the Main Street Program, which is a state-sponsored program that provides funding for planning efforts to redesign, redevelop, or renovate areas, typically old historic areas of downtowns around the country. And we have that program. We applied for it, and we got that from state government here in Oregon. The second part is called the Business Development Organization that we helped organize. They're a freestanding independent business organization of the businesses who are actually located along Broadway. And we've been working for a couple of years with them on redesign of Broadway and what it can be. And I don't have any photographs or pictures or drawings to show you, but the concept that you described in terms of making it more people-friendly, opening it to cafes and outdoor amenities and that sort of thing is exactly what we've asked the designers to do. The designs are basically done, and now what we're doing is pursuing funding, not necessarily from city coffers, but funding from the Bureau of Outdoor Recreation, the National Main Street Program, and the National Endowment for the Arts. And so the first step is going to be a wayfinding system so people know where they are and know where they can go, where the resources are, and then we'll begin making capital improvements like widening sidewalks and doing the kinds of things that are friendly to people. Hope that answers your question. Good.
Chris Leslie, forum member. What type of new businesses and new technologies are you trying to bring to Beaverton?
Gosh, that's a great question. What we did a couple of years ago was study what are the clusters of expertise, or what are the businesses that really have clustered here and that seem, for whatever reason, to work well in Beaverton. And we've identified a few. One, software is obviously our greatest strength in terms of number of businesses and growth potential, because software is with us now and really in some ways just in its infancy. And yet we have over 200 software companies that have developed in Beaverton. And the reason they develop here is because we have a population that is highly educated. We're the most highly educated city in Oregon after Portland, which surprises a lot of people, but that's the fact. And those people are, many of them, engineers and technicians of one kind or another. Secondly, we've identified electromechanical processes of a variety of kinds that are located here in Beaverton, where they're using electronics, usually in combination with some other technology. But electromechanical expertise is something that we have here. We have several companies in that arena, and we intend to continue to focus. Quality control, a generic term for, don't think of it as anything but trying to control quality of a given product. But in fact, we have a number of testing labs, for some reason, have located in Beaverton. We have one that's a global company that's headquartered here called VTM. Most people don't even know about VTM, and yet VTM is the largest organization in the world that verifies the quality of technology as it is developed, probably related to Intel. And then sports apparel. As you might expect, being proximate to Nike, the supply chain to Nike is beginning to gravitate here because Nike is beginning to bring back production to the United States, particularly of their highly customized goods. So those are some of the growth areas that we think are going to be very strong for the future, and we're focusing on them all the time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Phil Nelson, forum member, and thank you, Don, for coming.
Thank you,
Appreciate it.
Phil.
I was wondering about the theater project. There's been, performing arts has been something that's been ongoing for a while, and discussions being had. I wonder if you could bring us up to date on that.
Phil asked about the status of the Performing Arts Center concept. And the Arts Commission continues to have a Performing Arts Center as their #1 priority in terms of developing such a facility for Beaverton, which would not simply be a performance venue, but would also be an educational venue. It would be a place for artists and residents. It would be a training facility, as well as one that sponsors performances of different scale and type. They have just completed, I think, their 4th analysis of what they need in terms of size. That was done by Echo Northwest in conjunction with my department, the Community Economic Development Department. We're working with them now to try to identify a site or sites that might be candidates for a performing arts facility and see how they envision could be turned into reality. We're a ways away from that reality, ways away from the design, but I work pretty closely with Janie Scott and with the Arts Commission. We have a number of private sector patrons that are prepared to come forward and contribute substantial amounts of money to such a facility. But of course, ultimately, that's a call that the City Council will have to make as they consider the various plans from the Arts Commission. Thank you.
Virginia Bruce, forum member. I
Virginia.
have a couple of questions. One quick one.
Okay.
You're talking about saving energy. Has Beaverton considered implementing dark sky friendly lighting regulations? My theory is that very little crime happens above the streetlights, and you
Yeah.
can save energy.
That's probably true.
Yeah, by using dark sky friendly lighting standards the way that the county has implemented.
Actually, we're part of the dark hour observation that will be occurring in the next couple of weeks, where on a global scale, lights off for an hour to dramatically impact the amount of energy consumed. And our sustainability division, in fact, is working on exactly that technology. Right. The LED lights allow us to light down rather than do this kind of plume lighting that occurs on top. And so, you know, it is a matter that takes time, but slowly we are converting to exactly that strategy. So you'll be able to see the stars, among other things.
Well,
which
the
would be-
county currently requires dark sky friendly lighting
Right.
for new development.
Right.
We're
We
hoping
don't-
Beaverton will follow suit.
Yeah, we don't have a requirement, but we're headed in that direction.
Great. The other question is, I'm curious about the new enterprise zone that would include the Nike campus and the unincorporated area. If you could explain a little bit about the rationale and plans for that.
Question was about the enterprise zone and why does it include parts of Nike? Well, the reason it includes parts of Nike is because the way you define and lay out an enterprise zone is using census tract boundaries. And so the census tract boundary that happens at that location laps over Jenkin and laps over Murray and laps over Jay. And so in order to follow those boundaries and have consistent data, we utilize that census tract boundary. And you'll see divergences in other areas as well, not just Nike. The Nike Westfield, I think, is part of it, of the enterprise zone. If Nike wanted to utilize that, they've not indicated that to us, nor did they ask us to do it. We simply followed the census tract boundaries. Mm-hmm.
Hi, Don. John McWilliams, board member, and thank you for being here and sharing what's going on in Beaverton.
Oh, thank you.
So I was kind of curious. Do you coordinate at all with the Lowell Business Association for some things that are going there? Because you're very close together, and I don't see any annexing going on there, but at least I would think there'd be some kind of partnerships because they are so close together. So could you talk a little bit about that?
Tell me that again. I missed the first part of your question.
Well, I'm talking about the business, Aloha Business Association.
Aloha?
If Beaverton has anything that they coordinate together or try to make it a more compatible living
Right.
area for
Well,
everybody.
you may have read in today's paper, or editorial, I guess it was, about the Aloha Reedville study that's been underway for some time that the county sponsored. And I have a staff member who's not quite full-time on that project, but maybe one half-time. Jeff Salvin is his name, who's been working on the Aloha Reedville project. Our objective is to come up with a plan that can be executed, beginning with the identification of priorities for the area itself, with or without annexation, because there are a whole number of public health hazards in the area due to poor infrastructure, aged infrastructure, that need to be top priority before we reach any question about annexation. But ultimately, in our comprehensive planning process, we, City of Beaverton, will ask the question and need to answer it according to state law, where are our ultimate service boundaries going to be? And Aloha is certainly a logical part of that analysis, but anything around Beaverton is potentially a part of that discussion. So we're certainly not ignoring it. We don't know what the outcome will be. The next phase after public education, which they've completed, is to develop the plan. And we'll see what that plan looks like in about a year.
Okay, and so actually I was kind of wondering if there was any support between the Aloha Business Association and the City of Beaverton itself in the business sense
Well,
as they work to develop theirs and
they are participants in the Aloha Reedville study, and our economic development staff reaches out to Aloha businesses and associations as requested by them.
Right.
But we don't have a formal relationship.
thank you.
Thank you. I think I know the person who's coming to, now this is the tough question.
It's only been 2 months.
Yeah, that's true.
Kathy Stanton, forum member, thank you for coming, Mr. Mazziotti.
Thank you.
I heard you, at the beginning of your presentation, say that the council was considering moving to the South Office building. I thought they made that determination at a meeting in January.
Well, I think they've determined that they will, but they're still considering the
But there was
details.
there was a motion made, seconded, and passed 4-1. I mean, it was deemed not appropriate to make it that particular meeting in that particular time, or, because
No,
I thought they did that.
I think that decision has been made. It's more a question of when.
Oh, okay, so they are
this-
moving. I'm sorry, I thought I heard you say they haven't decided whether to move or not just the timing.
We believe that general government services will go into the South Office building.
Okay.
I just can't give you a date or tell you what it'll look like.
Oh, okay. My question has to do with the Business Technology Center. If we have time, I don't know if we do, but could
Oregon
you-
Business Technology Center.
Yes, if you
right.
could speak to that and the work it has done with new startup businesses in Beaverton.
Okay. Kathy just asked one question. Just kidding. The question was the Oregon Technology Business Center. And the Oregon Technology Business Center, also called OTBC, is a nonprofit organization which is supported by the city financially, in part. The role of that entity is to host startup businesses in low-cost space where they can develop their product or service and then graduate and move out and expand in Beaverton, relocate to another Beaverton location. And we have, I think there are 13 companies currently that are located in the incubator. It's full. I know that several are hoping to graduate this year, and they'll move on to a location that our economic development staff will help them with. They serve a job creation and investment function, and their board of directors, which is independent of the city, consists of folks who are venture capitalists, entrepreneurs, and financial people who are interested in promoting business in Beaverton. Does that help?
I'm Lee Coleman,
Hi, Lee.
forum member. On the subject of greening up,
Yeah.
Beaverton has within its borders a fuel cell company. Are you doing anything to reach out and put some fuel cells on government-owned buildings?
We don't have fuel cell technology in use at this point. We do have charging stations that we have installed, and we have met with several lithium battery companies as well as fuel cell companies. They're currently pursuing what's called SBIR financing, which we are helping them with. But we're interested in that technology, but it's not in use by the city itself at the moment.
Mark Freiberg, forum member and a resident of the Beaverton community.
I think I've met with you before.
Yeah, it's good to see you again. And could you elaborate a little more on the creek plan for Beaverton Creek, which seems to be a really good amenity for the center of the city?
I'll try. I wish I had brought along some pictures. As everyone knows, we have a three-creek system, part of two very large watersheds coming down from the Tualatin Mountains largely. And with that watershed function comes periodic and certainly nuisance flooding, maybe 6 months out of any given year is possible. We haven't experienced any serious flooding recently, but one of the reasons the flooding occurs is because some parts of the creek have been covered, the Beaverton Creek have been covered. Other parts of the creek system itself are full of non-native vegetation which have taken over the creek beds or the sides of the creeks such that they hold the water. They act as a dam. What we want to do is remove that non-native vegetation throughout the whole creek system, all the way, down to past Murray and beyond. And at that juncture, we want to also relocate any non-native animals that are in that area because they also cause erosion problems and other issues that contributes to the flooding issue. When that work is done, we will replant the whole system with native vegetation, which doesn't offer the same kinds of characteristic as the non-native. In some areas, we will actually cut the creek deeper and wider where that's possible. But our objective is not to try to increase the size of the creek. Its capacity to hold water and also its ability to see water move through it much more quickly than currently is the case. That protects property owners. And then we want to make sure that we define with exactitude where the floodplain and floodway are for adjoining property owners so that they have certainty as to where they can develop their property. Today, that's up in the air. FEMA, the Federal Emergency Management Administration, gets in the way of mapping this sometimes. They're responsible. We have to respond and have. We also need to replace two bridges that are part of the Beaver Creek as it passes through near Hall Street and then again over at Hawken. We need to replace those bridges because they are acting as dams as well. They're not big enough, they're bulky, they're big, they're not transparent, and so we're going to try to do that at the same time. And then we want to uncover those parts of the creeks that are not open.
And just one more follow-up. In terms of a walkway, a pleasant place to recreate, are there not plans for that?
There would be a pathway system established once we've taken care of the fundamental issue, which of course is the creek itself and the flooding problem. And then we have preliminary designs for pathways that would extend well, like on the other side of 217 and connect to the regional system, the intertwined system. And it would be a lit so that it would be flat so people could walk it fairly easily, including disabled people.
Chris Leslie, forum member. With creeks, are you going to restock them with salmon?
Well, I don't know that there'll be any salmon returning anytime soon. However, if you're familiar with the creek system in Eastmoreland, near Reed College, it's taken them about 10 years to clean up that creek. And of course, it flows into the Willamette. But they now have salmon fingerlings coming into that creek. And so it's not impossible to imagine a day, once we clean this up, that we'll see the return of native species fish of that kind. Yep. We're trying.
Hi, Marilyn McWilliams, forum member. Good to see you, Don.
Good to see you again.
I'm curious about the area that is north of the north of the Beaverton Transit Center and east of the Hallett Street extension. It's a large field, and there's kind of some informal pathways through it.
Mm-hmm.
Is that part of the development plan, part of the enterprise zone?
Well, it's actually privately owned property. The property you're referring to is owned by Steve and John Beege and Louise Pinion, their aunt. And Louise owns just a sort of a sliver, triangular piece, but put together, it's quite a large piece of property and a nice piece of property. Now, the soil conditions there are not very good for purposes of construction. So construction at that location would definitely require a good deal of expense if it were a large structure. So the more likely future is one that floats on concrete slabs rather than would be a very large multi-story. That could support 2 to 3 stories, but not much more than that. We don't have any current plans for that. We're working with the family to try to determine what are their plans for the future, what would they like to see. And we have a very good relationship with the Beege family, and that's important for the future because they have a lot of holdings.
Okay, great, thank you.
Thank you. Run out of questions?
Well, I'll ask one then.
Okay.
What's the intergovernmental relationship in that area around 6B with regard to the Hillsboro School District, the Beaverton School District, water, county planning, Tigard, and the residents thereof?
I think I'll defer on that question completely. There are a lot of jurisdictional issues. Let me kind of start with first, there's the matter of the area itself, and what do the people in the area want? Well, one thing they wanted was to annex to Beaverton. So we've adjusted our boundaries and jurisdiction, and they are part of the city of Beaverton, and that took about a year to get all that done. Next step, we met with, jointly, our city council met with the council in Tigard, obviously to the immediate south, and they've got that Bull Mountain area, which kind of abuts the 6B area to the south. So we met jointly with them, last month, talked about some common issues and how can we share infrastructure costs for pipes and the like so that we don't have to burden each one of us and the people who live there with double the cost. And so we're making progress in that regard, and we're meeting with the Tigard staff with some frequency. Kenny Asher, who's the new community development director there, my counterpart, is someone who I hired when I was head of PDC years ago, know him well. We have a great relationship. The third area, with regard to school district issues, it is an issue within the area and one of controversy where the people who are in 6B want to go to Beaverton schools because they're close, closer than Hillsboro. But the school district boundary doesn't cut all the way through 6B even. And so there would have to be, to satisfy the Beaverton School District, and those people probably change a boundary. The Hillsboro School District isn't enthusiastic about that. But since I don't serve on either one of those school boards, I'm not going to say anything else because I don't know anything else. Thanks for the question. Does that help?
I have a follow-up. Pat should go first.
Patricia Mayberry, board
Yep.
member. Thank you for joining us today.
Oh, thank you.
I know that Denny and the city of Beaverton have been very generous to the PAL program that has been in Beaverton.
Mm-hmm.
And I know through media and coverage that they have had their financial situation and problems. And now, hopefully, from what I understand, they're going to be separate and hopefully with the fundraising projects be able to be self-sustaining. But can you update us on where the support of the city of Beaverton is and what you might see in the near future for their continued service of the youngsters?
Yeah, well, first of all, according to Chief Spalding, they are now an independent organization from the Portland part. So they're entirely independent. They have new bylaws, new articles, new, all that sort of thing. And they still qualify for charitable contributions under 501c3 of the code. At the Jenkins Estate, this coming Saturday, or maybe even sooner, sometime this week, we're having a fundraiser for PAL. And you ought to check the Beaverton Valley Times as to the exact, on the event calendar, when that is. But we raised, just a couple weeks ago at the Mayor's Ball, I think we raised $5,000 that night, spontaneously, just as part of the, part of the auction or whatever was going on. Whether the city intends to use general fund to support them, that I don't know. That's a council decision. But I'm not sure that it's necessary. I think that there's enough interest in that program and what it does by private donors that will certainly participate in making the venue available, which is the community center or resource center, and do all we can to promote that program, because it does a lot of good for kids who otherwise are going to be on the streets. So, thank you.
Eric Squires, forum member. What I'd like to ask is your opinion on the TV highway study in contrast to City of Beaverton policy. The City of Beaverton is in the a process of trying to slow down traffic in order to improve the vibrancy of its downtown. In contrast, the TV highway study is focused on throughput. From the perspective of a driver moving fast, if possible on TV highway, to be slowed down at Beaverton, do you not see some irony in that policy? Wouldn't we want to get through to the 217 or further on? And do you find irony in that policy for City of Beaverton wanting to slow down traffic where other jurisdictions are trying to speed it up?
Well, I don't know if the other jurisdictions are trying to speed it up. I participated on the committee. What we discovered some things that we didn't know before. One of the things that we discovered is that, contrary to popular notion, the congestion that you experience from 217 to, let's say, Murray, is not the result of regional traffic. It's not the result of a huge number of people headed to Hillsboro, or Aloha for that matter, or parts in between. It's local traffic. And it's local traffic that does not have north-south connection options that they would like to have but don't have currently. And so the civic plan that I mentioned earlier, which we've completed to look at that segment of Beaverton, contains a series of improvements that would create new north-south streets or connectors so they could relieve traffic off of Canyon. And we believe in so doing would dramatically reduce the volume of traffic. In fact, if you slow the traffic down and you have those kinds of relief points, it'll become safer than it is currently. It'll become more efficient from a travel time standpoint, but most importantly, it will allow pedestrian traffic and the city not to feel like it's completely separated by this wall of trucks and cars going through, which is, when we did our community vision, was the #1 objective of the community. Calm traffic on Canyon Road, make it safer, make it more pleasant, and at the same time, reduce congestion. And so we're trying to use a variety of tools to accomplish that without spending enormous amounts of money. The early proposal was for addition of 2 additional lanes on TV Highway. If you can imagine what that would do to Beaverton in terms of expanding lanes to that, those lanes would attract traffic, obviously. And not only that, they displace a lot of businesses. And we had no choice but to say, that doesn't sound good to us, let's explore other alternatives. And that's when we made these discoveries about the nature of the traffic. Thank you.
As the furor of the one question rule, which by the way the body can overturn anytime it feels like, and often does on a case-by-case basis. I showed the proper manner. I asked a question, went to the back, I'm going to ask again. Okay, north-south, basically the mayor of Hillsboro, when he spoke here earlier this year, spoke about an access point north-south along the route of what was formerly the West Side Bypass plan from 84 or 82, which encompassed extending essentially Cornelius Pass down to Shoals Ferry. As you're aware, 6B came in the same land use changes as did South Beaverton and the changes around Bull Mountain. Does Beaverton Development have any thoughts with regard to that area of land which is listed as Corridor H on some of the metro plans?
Is this the West Side Bypass project?
The nomenclature is poisonous, but I think
that's why
what was formerly called the West Side Bypass.
205 extension, okay. I don't make public policy. And so as far as, you know, what Beaverton's policy is on that issue, I don't think there's an official policy position. And that's really all I can say.
Kathy Stanton, forum member, following up on something on the topic that Eric Squires brought up on the Canyon TV Highway. I believe Canyon and TV Highway is a federally designated truck route.
Yes.
So whatever amenities could come forward, is the city looking to get that designation changed and moving that truck route somewhere else, or just going to add it to the mix there?
Counselor, we want to continue to accommodate freight traffic, which is, after we study the data, a relatively modest amount of freight traffic on that highway, mostly straight line or local delivery trucks, and not, you know, large scale vehicles that are serving Intel or Nike. So that's one thing that was important for us to understand. The problem that I think you're referring to is called the hole in the air. And the hole in the air is a concept that for a highway that in any way is federally assisted, and they are federally assisted but not federal highways, there is a theoretical hole in the air to allow high clearance, not just under bridges, but through the hole in the air as they travel through a federally assisted program. We are working with the Federal Highway Administration now on exactly that issue, and making certain that we preserve the hole in the air that is necessary for freight, and at the same time design it in a way, or redesign it in a way, that will allow us to do these north-south improvements and other things that we aspire to do along the way. We haven't finished those discussions. Laura Kelly, who I know you know well, Laura is the person assigned to working with Jason Tell, the District 1 engineer at ODOT, and so in combination I think we'll come up with a solution, but I don't know what it is today.
Thank you, Don.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Don Mazziotti is the Director of Community and Economic Development for the City of Beaverton. You work for Tom McCall. But that was for his 1978 campaign. A whole bunch of